Hello! In this video, we're going to learn about traversing the DOM with jQuery. And boy, there are a lot of confusing videos about this out there. So I hope that this one is clear and shows you how it's really worth it to learn how to use the jQuery DOM methods. So we're going to work with this page, or a simplified version of this page. And right now it's only got 3 countries on it, but the idea is that it could have 10 or 100, and they would all work with the same short amount of jQuery code. So what does the page do? Well, it does this, right? So we can get some facts about each country. And when you open or close facts for any country, the other ones will close up automatically, right? So you don't have all the fact divs open at the same time. And also you can show more text for each country, right? So we're going to learn how to do both of these things with jQuery methods. And we can also put the extra text away again. The code for each of those 2 things is different, but it works identically for all 3 countries. And let's close that up. So we're going to work with some simplified code that just looks like this, okay? So not the whole country. And right now, nothing works on the page. If I click anything, nothing does anything because there is currently no jQuery, okay? There's only the document ready function, and so we're going to write all the jQuery to do the things. And let's look at the HTML to begin with, okay? So this is the simplified HTML, and what you'll see is that each heading and orange box and brown box is in a section. So on the original, the full version, it would be 1 country in 1 section. And then each of the sections is identical. So there is no special code in any section. It doesn't even tell you the name of a country, okay? And I'll show you the full version with all the country information, right? It's exactly the same. There is no ID, there's nothing on the section at all. And every top div is just called top. And there's nothing special in here except 2 classes. And they're the same for every single one. There's a class called moretext and a class called morelink. There's a class called clicker, but those are the same in every single one that we look at. And the brown box that is hidden has no special code of any kind except 1 class on the outer div of the brown box. So, and then of course we have our jQuery library attached at the bottom, and our jQuery that we write is attached below the library tag. So how did we make this? Oh, and one thing so far, the CSS does not have anything special, just margin and padding, regular things that a beginner has learned already. So there are some classes for things to make them look the way, orange and brown and so forth. And the one special thing that you may not have seen before is that on the orange box that we click and on the link that says more, it's not really a link, it's actually just a word, I have changed the cursor to be pointer, the value pointer, and the pointer makes the hand on most in most browsers, right, on a desktop, so that when I roll over more, even though I'm clicking, nothing's happening, okay? I click and nothing happens, but the hand comes up when I roll over more, and the same with the orange box, right? So that is done with 1 line in your CSS on the thing where you want the cursor to become that little hand. Okay, and before we get going, there's one thing that I want to do to give you a better idea of the layout, the structure actually of the page. You've seen the HTML, but I want you to have a visual. So I'm going to temporarily add something into the CSS. And what I'm adding is just a border and a little padding and a little margin on 3 things. The three things are the section element, the div that has a class of top, and the div that has a class of bottom, because we're going to be working with those things in traversing the DOM. So I want you to have a clear idea of where they are. So I'm going to save and reload. And again, this is just temporary to show you what they are, okay? So can you see that there are three sections that each start with the word heading? Okay, so those are the section elements. And inside each section, this bigger box, is a top div that begins with heading and includes the button that says View Hidden, and a second div, and this is the div with the class of bottom, it says Some Content Here. So these three sections each have two identical divs, one named top, one named bottom, okay? So I'm going to take that outline off now, so because that's not helping our design, right? But that was just to show you so you can get a clear idea. All right, get that off, save, and reload. So let's get going with what things we want to happen. So when the page first opens up, like this one, we want the extra text to be hidden, not visible, right? And we also want the brown box to be hidden. So I'm going to do that right away on our smaller version, okay? That's really simple jQuery. And we want to look at the classes for those things so that we know how to hide them. So let's look in the HTML to find what are their classes. And so the extra text is inside a span, and the class is more text. So I'm going to copy that so that I don't mess it up. And I'm going to go into my JSS file, and I'm going to enclose that so that it becomes a jQuery object, right? And I need a dot because it's a class. So now it's a jQuery object, and I will simply hide it, semicolon, right? And what is my other thing called that I want to hide? I want to hide the brown box, and that is Some Content Here. That is this div. So the class is bottom. And so we go in here and we make that a jQuery object. It's a class, so we need the dot, bottom, and we do exactly the same thing, hide. All right, now if I save and I reload, watch it, it's going to hide. Okay, so all the extra text hid and all the brown boxes hid, and that was done with this. Okay, but now we're going to get started with the real stuff, right? Okay, so our first goal is to make the div with the class bottom, the brown one that's hidden. We want to make it show when we click this orange div that says View Hidden. Okay, so we need to click this orange bar, so we need to know what to call it when we make it in jQuery. So the orange bar that says View Hidden, there it is, okay, and it's the same in every section, right? So it's a class of clicker, all right? So I'm gonna go into my JavaScript, and we're gonna have to have an event listener. I just pasted that so you don't have to watch me type. And the end of the event listener will close with a curly, a paren, and a semi, all right? So what we need to put into the event listener is the code that will cause the bottom div to show when we click the clicker, right? So we pretty much know what that is because we already hid the bottom div with this line, bottom hide. So we can copy that, paste it in there, and just change hide to show. And that would cause the hidden div to show when we click the thing with the class clicker. But it would be cooler, more fun, nicer, to have that div toggle on and off. So if it's hidden, it'll show, and if it's showing, it'll hide. So jQuery has toggle that does show and hide together, and let's use that instead of just plain show when we click. So we'll go over here and we'll reload, and now what happens? Well, of course, they all show. because we're using the same code in every section, and we're using the code that targets every single thing on the page that has a class of bottom, and that's all 3 brown divs. Now it does toggle, okay, but we definitely don't want them all to open. So this is where the DOM comes in. You want to imagine that you had to build a page for not just 3 countries, but maybe 10 or 100 countries, right? And you don't want to write IDs and classes for every single different country. That would drive you crazy. It would be a waste of time. And that's how the DOM can help us. So it's nice to use the Chrome developer tools for this. So we will open them up to sort of figure out what are we targeting. So we'll open our developer tools and we'll look at the elements, and actually we'll click on one of the orange bars and say inspect. Okay, so it is in this div with a class of clicker, as we know, and it's below a paragraph but not inside it. It's below a heading but not inside it. It's inside the div with a class of top. Okay, great. So this div with a class of top, this is the parent of the clicker. So this is important, right? We want to know what is the parent of the clicker and what is its relationship to the div we want to show, which is this one, the one with the class of bottom, which is hidden, right? Well, it's usually hidden, but right now it's showing so that we can see this, right? So what we can see is that the clicker is inside the div with the class top. The hidden div, the div with the class of bottom, is completely outside that top div. Both the top and bottom divs are inside a section, okay? So this structure is the key to what we want to do. We need to get to the top div, right? When we click View Hidden, we have to get to the top div, and then we have to move over to its sibling div inside the section. So as long as we're in one section, we're only going to target one div with a class of bottom if we stay in one section, okay? And then we're going to show or toggle that div. So this idea of moving in the DOM, we have to get from the button up to its parent, and then we have to go over to the sibling of that parent. So let's look at the code. We will start with the current target, okay? And you know what? I'm going to throw something in here. In a lot of things you'll see online, you'll see this instead of current target. That would work if we were not using the arrow function style. But since we are, this won't work. So we have to use event current target. And when we use event, we have to have the word event in the parentheses. If we had E in here, we would have E down here, but we're going to use event. All right. So what is the event current target? This thing right here, this object that we just made, the current target of the click event is the thing with the class of clicker, meaning the orange bar that says View Hidden, right? So when we say event current target, we are referring to the thing that we clicked, which happens to be that orange bar. Now remember, we want to go up to its parent, the div that is containing it, right? So parent is a method in jQuery. So now we could do something with that div. But the parent of the orange bar is not the div that we want to hide and show. It's the sibling, the parallel one. So the really nice thing is that we don't have to deal with the siblings and the children and all those things, because jQuery has this really nice method called next. There's also one called previous, prev, P-R-E-V, okay? And what this means is once you're at the level of the things that are beside each other, which is siblings, then you can just go to the next one or go to the previous one, which we really want to do a lot of the time. So using this is really good. So at this point in this line, from the thing we clicked, up the DOM to its parent, the top div, next over to the sibling, the bottom div, this is the thing that we want to toggle. So we get rid of this and just pull that toggle on up and save, all right? So I hope you followed that idea of the parent go up and the next go sideways, and then toggle that, and that will be the div with the class of bottom. So save and reload, and only that one, only that one, only that one. Now, if we leave them open, if we don't toggle, if we don't close them, they stay open. And that's the next thing I want to deal with. But before we even do that, I want to make this a little prettier. I want to make it the slide toggle. It'll just look cooler. Save. Reload. Okay, now, beautiful, right? Slowing down because that's open. Here we go. Much smoother. All right, so we can open all of them and have them all open. But I think the next thing that you really want to do, and what I have done on this one is, when one is open and you open another one, you want that one to close. When one is open and another one is already open, you don't want them all to be open. We're going to close any open ones. Okay, only have one open at a time, one unhidden, one slid down, one showing, okay, one brown box at a time. So how do we do that? So your first inclination might be to use this, or maybe the slide version of this, right? So when you click on the clicker, just hide everything with the class of bottom, or to make it nicer, maybe have it slide up, okay? Well, let's see if that actually works. Let's go over here and reload, and okay, so far so good. It looks like it's working nicely, but there's a problem. So because we have slide toggle on these, yeah, so when I press on one that's already open, it does this silly thing. So the hiding works really well, but the toggle doesn't work so well. And then you might think, oh, I'll just change this back to slide down. But like, well, the slide toggle's nice. So we can fix this with the DOM. We can use the DOM to fix this, and it's going to be beautiful, right? This is where jQuery's siblings method really shines. When we use siblings, we are saying, do this to all the things like me, but don't do it to me. So the things like me must all be at the same level in the DOM, side by side, not down inside other things, okay? So we can't use the bottom divs directly because none of the bottom divs are siblings to each other, right? Only the sections in this HTML, only the sections are siblings to each other for each country, right? So in order to get all the bottom divs closed, or to close any one that happens to be open, but not close the one we're on and open it again like we just saw, okay, we're going to use siblings. So what we need to do is we need to get from the event target, which is the clicker, up to the section element, which doesn't have any class or ID. And we want to go up to just the one that belongs to that clicker, okay? And we have to go higher than a parent because the parent of the clicker, as we saw before, is the div with the class top. So we have to go beyond that. So anytime you have to go higher up the DOM tree than a parent, higher than a parent, the best thing to use is closest. Okay, so this is another jQuery method. So instead of this, we will keep the slide up. We're going to use the current event target first, right? Because that's our starting point. The thing that was clicked, we have to go up past its parent. But now we are, for a change, we're going to put something in these parentheses in this method. And the thing that we want to get is the section. So this is how we get the section that this clicker is inside of, and only that one section, closest section, the one above it, okay? So now that we have targeted the section we're already inside of, we want to get all of its siblings. Okay, here's where the siblings comes in. The section we're in, we want the brown box to stay just the way it is. All the siblings of the section we're in, meaning all the other sections, we want those to close. We want them to slide up and be closed. So this is where we use siblings with an S on the end, siblings, nothing in the parentheses. So what this is telling us is get the section that I'm inside and get its siblings, which is everybody but it. Everyone except it, the section I'm in, right? And then, I know this is getting long, then we have to find another jQuery method. We have to find inside of every other section the thing with the class of bottom. Dot because it's a class, right? And that's finally the end. Okay, so we are going to get the section we're in, and we're going to get all its brothers and sisters, all its siblings. And in each one of those, we're going to find the bottom. So every single bottom in every section except the one we're in, we are going to slide up. Actually, not done yet. So this is where this comes in, sorry. There. And since this goes off the page, which is not very nice, you can actually break the line in front of any dot, okay, in front of a dot. And because of the semicolon, this is all one big chain of jQuery methods. And it is going to work perfectly. It is going to, because of the magic of the method siblings, it's not going to mess with the brown box where we are, but it is going to take care of all the other ones. So I save and I reload. And now what is happening? Smooth as silk. And if I toggle, no weird effect, right? So I can go to anybody and I can toggle back and forth and everything is completely smooth. So I know that was a long string of things, and you have to remember this is all one thing, but this is very, very jQuery, right? Go up the DOM to my parent, get all my parent's siblings, and inside them find the thing with the class of bottom, and for all those bottom divs, slide them up. Any one that is open, even if there's none open, it won't cause an error, it's fine. So this event listener is done. So we have done half of what we need to do to this page, okay? Now the next part won't take as long because we've done all the preliminaries, right? And the next part is going to be that hiding and showing the extra text. So let's look at our big version again so you can see what that's like, right? So there is a word that says more, and when we click it, we get a lot more text. And when we say less, it goes back away again. And these, we can open them all up so we don't have to worry so much about all the many siblings, right? So we can leave those all open at the same time, and we can close any one we want to. And did you notice that when we click less, not only does the text hide again, but the word more comes back. So we click more, and we get the word less. We click less, and we get the word more. So that's the next thing that we are going to make in this jQuery, and that's our final task. All right, and in our simplified version of the page, we have the same more and less, but we have not made them work yet. So I'm clicking, but nothing's happening, all right? So we probably should have a look at our HTML so we remind ourselves, how is this set up? And so the hidden text, which is very long in the full version, Okay, so in the full version, it's a really big long hunk of text, right? In the simplified version, it's just a short little hunk of text. The key here is that the text that's hidden is surrounded by a span element. It's in a span element, and that span has a class, more text. And the little word more is in a separate span element, and its class is more link. So those are the two things we're going to be working with. Hopefully my class names are intuitive, right? More text is the text that is hidden and shown, and more link is the word that we click in order to show it and also to hide it again. Now, since these two spans are side by side in the DOM, in each case, in each section, we don't have to do that much work at all. They're already siblings, they're already right beside each other, so there's not that much traversing that has to be done. In the previous part of the video, we used jQuery's next method because we went to something that came after. Now we're going to use the prev method, P-R-E-V, as in previous, because when we click this, the thing we want to manipulate is immediately before it. So it's the previous element. So we're going to use prev to target this. So we're going to have to set up a second event listener, and I'll just paste that in, okay? So this is the one for hiding the text. And this is the one for hide, show, brown box, right? There we go. So we can keep straight what we're doing. All right, so we are going to click on the span that has a class, more link, just the word more. And when we click on that thing, right, some stuff is going to happen. And we haven't written that yet. So we know that we've already hidden the more text, okay? So we can get that from our previous code, paste it in there, and what we really want to do is show, okay? Is that all we need to do? What'll happen if we use that? You know, right? Do you know? They all show. We can't use that, right? So this is what I was talking about with prev. How are we going to use prev? So we're not going to use this. We're going to use our event target. And it's going to work because we put event in here, we have event in here. So the thing that we clicked on, right? Thing that we clicked on, no, we're not going to show it. The thing that is previous to it is the thing we're going to show. So now let's see. Let's see how that DOM works for us. Ta-da! All right. But we're not hiding anything yet. Now it still says more, and when we click it, nothing happens. We want this text to say less after we clicked it and it showed the hidden text, right? So we no longer want this to say more at this point. We want it to say less. That's actually pretty easy to do. We can put that in here and we can say, same thing, the same event target, and jQuery has a method text, and we can actually change the text like this, and we can change it to less in quotation marks, right? Because it's a string. And let's go back here. All right, so now, aha, it says less. It says less, it says less. Of course, it still doesn't do anything when we click it, does it? Because we didn't make it do anything. What we really want to do is hide it again. The text that we just showed, we want to hide it when this word says less. And that's the key. So we can actually read this text inside this span. We can use jQuery to read it. And if it says more, we can show the hidden text. And if it says less, we can hide the hidden text. So you heard me say if and if, right? So it's time for some conditionals, right? We're going to put some conditionals into our jQuery. So let's move this down a little bit, all right? So we're going to have if something, else something, right? So if more, show, and if less, hide, right? So that's a teeny tiny little bit of pseudocode to help us figure this out. And we actually already know where this is going to go, right? This is going to go in here. Oops, should have just cut that to begin with, okay? So if, what are we looking for? We're looking for if the text, copy, paste, it's got to have these little empty parentheses. So if we're trying to read what's inside the element's text, we do that. So it's empty, we're just trying to read the inside. So if it is equivalent to more, right? If it's equivalent to more, we'll do these two things that we know work. And else, we don't have to do if it's equal to less, because that's the only other thing it can ever be equal to, right? So then what's going to happen? We can just copy this and edit it, because we know it's going to be the opposite, right? So it's going to be the previous thing. It's still the previous element to the thing we clicked. So we're going to hide it. And instead of changing the text to less, because that's what it already said, right? We're going to change it back to more. And you might wonder why I have spaces around these. Well, because that's what's in my HTML. So if you're trying to read what's in there and say if it's equivalent to, you better have it exactly right. If there's spaces in there, you need to keep the spaces. So did we save this? I think we're done. So let's reload and more, less, more, less. Cool. More, less, less, less. It all totally works. So let's have another look at that code. And so you thought it was going to be all hairy and terrible again with siblings and closest. And no, we just used this handy little prev. Prev is a nifty little tiny jQuery method, and it is so helpful. And why did it work? Why did it work? It worked because we had two things that were beside each other. They didn't have to both be spans, but they had to both be beside each other. So like if this had been a strong element or an M element or even an ahref element, right? The element that is immediately previous to this one is the one that would be affected by our code when we're using the jQuery prev method. Okay, so what have we done in this video? We have traversed the DOM. We have used reusable code with a simple structure with a repeated pattern for each section so that we could add as many countries as we wanted to this, and they would all have exactly the same HTML, different contents, but the same HTML, and we wouldn't have to label every country and so forth. A small number of classes, no IDs at all. DOM methods that we have covered are parent, next, prev, siblings, closest, and find. Remember that closest goes up the DOM, past the parents, higher, up, And find goes down, down inside containers, things below where you are. These methods, they are tricky, but they are so, so useful because they actually save you a lot of work in the end. So I hope this has been helpful, and I'm sorry it got so long. And please have fun using the DOM with jQuery.